Hello, I'm Abigail Marquez, General Manager for the City of Los Angeles Community Investment for Families Department. Welcome to Pathways to Prosperity, a show where we highlight our department's anti-poverty and homelessness prevention programs. In today's show, I'm excited to discuss one of the most transformational efforts to alleviate poverty, our city's Guaranteed Basic Income program called Big Leap. For 1 year, we provided $1,000 of unrestricted cash assistance to 3,200 individuals and distributed more than $38.4 million. These funds allowed families to catch up on rent, to avoid eviction and displacement, pay bills, cover unexpected medical expenses, purchase groceries, and address other basic needs. But what I love most about this program is that the funds allowed individuals to invest in themselves and their families and to disrupt the cycle of financial insecurity. Our final payments were disbursed nearly 1 year ago, but our CIFD team still supports participants through our Family Source Centers and our financial coaching. Today, you'll meet two amazing participants who will share their experience in the program. Please welcome Alondra and India, two Big Leap participants who are here today and are going to talk about the financial security that they were able to see through this work. I'm also joined by our in-house expert, Erin Strauss, who is a Senior Program Manager for the Community Investment for Families Department, Office of Community Wealth. Welcome to all of you and thank you for joining me today. So I'm going to start with just asking a little bit of background from Erin, and then I'm going to come back to you, Alondra and India. But this is a conversation. I want us to talk about the impact of the work, of this work, but also some of the challenges that you saw with, how it was distributed and what you'd like to see, what you want us as government to be able to walk away with from after today's show. But I'm going to start with Erin. Erin, you've been involved from the very beginning since we conceptualized Big Leap, and I want to acknowledge the leadership of Councilmember Corinne Price and Councilmember Harris Dawson, who were on the City Council when this program was established, and others, the leadership of the mayor and the entire City Council for supporting this work. Erin, talk about the criteria. How did we identify who to select and how to make this opportunity available to Angelenos across our city?
Sure. Well, I want to start by recognizing that the need is greater than everyone we're able to serve. With that in mind, we implemented 5 eligibility criteria. The first is that folks had to reside in the city of Los Angeles because we were using City of LA funds. So therefore, they had to be residents of the city. The second is that they had to be 18 years of age or older upon application, because this is a research study also. It presents an opportunity to show how the money was impactful from a qualitative and quantitative perspective. Mm-hmm. And in order to give consent to be part of the research, they had to be 18 years of age or older at time of application. In line with our department's mission to serve families and disrupt that multi-generational cycle of poverty, we wanted to serve families. So all participants also had to have a dependent child under the age of 18 or be pregnant at the time of application. We also wanted to reach those in the most need of financial assistance. So all participants needed to show that they had income below the federal poverty level. In 2021, that was about $25,000 a year for a family of 4, which certainly is not enough in the city of Los Angeles.
That's right.
And then the last criteria, aligned with the city's efforts to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, all applicants had to show that they were impacted either financially or medically by COVID. On top of those 5, applicants all had an equal chance of being selected into the program. We had lots of applications and ultimately randomly selected 3,200 families.
That's right. Do you remember how many applications we received in a 10-day window?
Yes, we had over 250,000 hits to our website, and ultimately over 50,000 people have completed the application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the need is so great,
yes.
And we wish we would have been able to serve everyone, and we just didn't have the resources to do that. But now that Erin has reminded us of the criteria that we use to identify the participants, we have the two of you again, India and Alondra. Take us back. I know that I talked about how it's been over a year since our last disbursement was made to the participants of our initial pilot. But if I can take us back to January of, 2021, I believe, 2022.
Yes.
January of 2022 was when we made the announcement that we had funded, the program was moving forward. It was moving forward with selecting the participants. Tell us where you were when we contacted you to tell you that you had been selected to participate in the program. And I'm going to start with India, and then I'm going to come to Alondra.
So where I was in my life, I was just getting out of a breakup, and I had my 2 kids. I was contacted via text message and email, and I thought it was a scam. I immediately was like, I'm not going to respond. But then I got another message with the same information, and so I was like, oh, let me just check it out. And it turned out not to be a scam, and really helpful for both me and my kids during a time of where we really, really needed it, moving back home with family, and not having their dad to rely on for things in regards to like our housing. So,
Yep. Thank you. Alondra?
Well, I also kind of felt the same. So when I saw the email, I was like, oh, I know I applied, but like maybe someone got my email from there and they were like, oh no, we're trying to get your personal information. But then as like it continued, because I also got another email, I was like, okay, you know what? I really need the money. So like fingers crossed, and then if they ask me for my social, I'm gonna just leave. And then it didn't work out like that. Actually, it ended up being at a center that I have heard of before, which is I think New Economics for Women. And then I was talking to Celeste, who was the person who was like my contact, I guess, for getting my card. And when I told her, I was like, do you need my social? She's like, no, we don't need none of that. And that was so reassuring to me, because I was like, okay, because I was like really worried this was a scam. And she like was like, no, this is money to help you. And I was like, so I need to bring you guys like bills to show you like later what I used it on and stuff. And then she's like, no, you don't need to prove anything to us. This is like for you to use how you think your household needs it. And you don't need to come and verify anything with us. From now on, you'll just get this disbursement every month. But if you do need any help, just let us know. And I was like, oh. And then, I'm new to being an adult at that time, because I at the time was living with my mom still. And I had my daughter, and she was like less than 5 months. And I was really nervous because I hadn't been a mom before. And I was a college student. And I was also doing an internship with North Valley Caring Services. So it was taking up most of my time, and I didn't really even have time to be with my kid, and I had a really bad postpartum. So I was struggling to like even be happy. And so I was really nervous, and then once I started receiving the money, I'm like, oh my God, it's real. Like, and I was able to spend stuff on like buy my computer and like any school supplies that I needed. And it was really beneficial at the time. And then especially with what happened once I started receiving the money, because I became homeless and I didn't know what to do, and it was very scary, but it became my safety net. And Big Leap didn't just become like, oh, this money that could just help me so I can keep going to school, and so that maybe I don't have to work so many hours so I could be with my baby. It became this like, I need this to survive. And I was still working my internship. I dropped out of school, but it was helping me pay for hotels, helping me pay for food and everything, because I originally didn't go to the shelters. I didn't know what to do when I first became homeless. It was just kind of like, oh my God, I don't know where to go. And that was like a scary thing. And I was glad, because Big Leap wasn't just income that I was receiving. It was a team behind me that was like, we got your back in whatever way we can.
Thank you. I know that you were also part of the documentary. You're one of the individuals that was profiled, and they followed your journey, and we were able to see the challenges that you were navigating as you were transitioning from the shelters. And so I just want to thank you both for your courage and your resiliency to continue to fight, right? And know that this was the reason I say that this has been one of the most transformational programs that I've been a part of, is that as government, we have been supporting families for years since government was created. But what we've done is we have not been able ever before this work to provide the direct cash to the individual. What we do is we pay the landlord, we pay your utility bill, but we don't create the opportunity to financially empower you to make those decisions for yourselves and for your family. So I think that's what's been really eye-opening and transformative about this work. So I want to talk to Erin about, you talked about how you were spending the funding month after month, and talk about what we're seeing. We are tracking all of the spending. We have the spending data that we look at monthly. What have we seen, and what have we learned from the data? Talk about the profile of our guaranteed income participant.
Sure.
And then what we hope that we have a research partner, and what we will hope to see from the research.
Sure. So yeah, I'll quickly cover the demographic data. The average Big Leap participant is 38 years old, we have 2 children, 2/3 are single, 80% are women. So it really is the face of poverty in Los Angeles that is reflected in the participants of the program. On the spending side of things, what we can track, we see people are spending in ways that anyone else would spend. They're meeting their basic needs. They're spending on transportation, on food, on shelter, on household goods. And I think it's important for folks to see that spending data because it does dispel these incorrect notions that people experiencing financial insecurity are there because of their own lack of judgment, a lack of character. It's their fault somehow. Really, folks just want to support their families, and that bears out in the data. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, Big Leap is a research project, and every 6 months, participants were sent a survey where they could answer questions about their well-being, right? Their financial well-being, their emotional health, mental health, and we're hoping that the research, which comes out soon, will show that all of these markers improved, not just financial stability, but what that financial stability led to, all those increased outcomes in the realm of health, but also a better sense of self-worth and dignity, I think is a big thing that can come out of a program like Big Leap, which is unique to guaranteed income in contrast to the way that other social safety net programs are run.
What I really appreciated about our pilot is that because it was becoming a national phenomenon, guaranteed income, there's many cities now across the country, many in the state of California, and I want to acknowledge the work of former Mayor Michael Tubbs, who led this work in Stockton and is now part of this national movement. The county has a program as well called Breathe, is that we were able to also protect public benefits in a way that's never been done before. And I know that we were talking about how you get a little bit of money and then they cancel out another benefit. So talk about that experience and how that was maybe different with guaranteed income, because we did have protections in place with guaranteed income. We were able to keep some of the, like CalFresh, if people were receiving CalFresh program, they were able to maintain that and still not have the income from Big Leap damage their ability to continue on the CalFresh program. So talk about that component as well. I'll start with Alondra.
So for me, it was really nerve-wracking because when I did receive the income, I thought, well, how's this gonna affect my benefits and what is gonna happen with that? Because anytime with a job, whenever you start getting paid, usually they reduce your cash aid a lot and then they reduce your CalFresh. Like with my mom when she was younger, she had us really young at 18 and stuff. So they had only they originally gave her $100, then they dropped it to 26, and it just wasn't worth it anymore to keep filling out the paperwork, keep trying to show them proof of everything that she's doing, and then only be getting that much money. So she had to figure out other ways to do it. Thankfully for me, because I was receiving Big Leap, it wasn't so much of a, oh my goodness, what am I going to be missing out on? Because the Big Leap, the money that I was getting was a lot bigger than what the cash aid that I get anyway is. And then on top of it, I didn't have to consistently prove anything. And when it came to my job, I told Celeste, I was like, hey, well, I'm doing an internship, I get this amount. She's like, oh, that's okay. That's not something that is gonna disqualify you, and it's not something you need to update us on, because I was like, I'm only gonna have this job for this long. She's like, that's okay. We're not gonna continue checking on you and seeing are you having employment? Are you doing this? This money is for you to help yourself. And it really gave me that stepping stone to learn how to help myself, to learn how to pay my own bills instead of relying on a program that will sometimes pay it, and then it's not addressing the issue that I don't know how to be consistent with my own money. And there was a lot of trial and error when I got the money, because there were some times where I was like, oh, I want to buy this or I want to buy that, and then I would end up oh, well, the money's not there anymore. And I started learning how to budget, and I started learning how to save, because when you don't have money and you get money, you want to use it. You're like, oh, especially if you have a little bit extra, you're like, man, I haven't got my nails done, or I want, I don't even have, because I had to buy these earrings because I didn't have earrings, and I was like, I want to buy stuff, but then at the same time you have all these needs that you need to do, and when you have the money, you start learning how to budget. You start learning how to sit here and be like, okay, since I have these funds, I can allocate it to this. I can either pay for food, or I can sit here and pay for my computer, but then these two cost this much, and you start figuring it out. Whereas when you are just surviving paycheck to paycheck and you don't even have enough money for all your basic needs, it's how are you ever supposed to learn? And then people are impulsive. We're human beings. That's like psychology. Like nobody's perfect, and a lot of people aren't taught what to do. So it's like this was a big opportunity for me to learn how to survive on my own. And then especially with all the resources that were provided, I was able to take financial workshops. I was able to sit here and learn and educate myself and have the money to educate myself. Because when you don't have the money, how are you supposed to learn?
Sure. Thank you.
And for me, I mean, I was receiving CalFresh when I initially started with Big Leap, and I wasn't disqualified, but I was working as well. So I was working, and I was really happy that that didn't disqualify me for Big Leap. But I think that there's this like notion that, you know, like that maybe I wasn't working and that's why I was receiving the Big Leap or I was receiving the CalFresh. But I mean, I was working, and I would say Big Leap was like in addition to what I was already, you know, working hard to earn. Big Leap was an addition to help me and my kids stay afloat, because without it, we wouldn't have been afloat.
Yeah, I mean, I think about like when we're looking at the spending data, we see how much people are using to purchase food. And, you know, I think the other day I have teenagers now, so it's been a long time since I've had to purchase diapers or formula, but just how expensive those items are now, and how you need them. They are part of what your basic necessities are for your children. And I think a lot of those things get lost as we're categorizing where people are spending these, or how they were spending these funds. But I think the other piece for me that I wanted you to, or for us that we wanted to highlight in this, is to lift up the challenges of working families who are working. You know, we have in our city a poverty crisis. We have 600,000 people who are struggling to make ends meet today. It's larger than the entire population of the city of Long Beach. I often, give that example. And 2/3 are working. They're working a full-time job. And so we wanted to lift up those voices and bring to light the faces of, people who are struggling because of high cost of rent, limited employment opportunities. And we were talking, I know before we started to tape, we're talking about parents who have children with developmental delays. There's that factor that has to come into play as well, and the flexibility that we need as parents with children who have special needs to be able to take them to the resource center or some of these other places to get help. So I don't know if there's anything you want to expand on that. I know, Alondra, in the documentary, I remember that what I remember you talking about is how guaranteed income helped you secure other housing. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, because oftentimes I think that's a huge area for us to lift up, because we have such a high challenge with, or high number of people who are unhoused in our city today.
So that's a great topic. I definitely, I guess, would say am in gratitude and indebted to Big Leap for the fact that I wouldn't be here today had it not been for the services that I was receiving. I tried to apply for apartments so many times, and I would get rejected because they would always tell me you need to make 3 times the rent. And 3 times the rent for just a studio apartment right now is like $1,500 for 1 month. So it would be $4,500 for what they want me to be making. And so like I was not making that at all with just having my child. So it's like when I was applying, I would let them know like, hey, LA Family Housing is covering me, they'll help me pay the rent, and that wasn't enough. And then I was like, why don't I just use Big Leap? I was like, hey, I'm also a participant in this program, and they're also guaranteeing that I get this amount of money a month. And so once they saw that, some apartments were more lenient, but then I finally got an apartment who was like, yeah, of course, you have this guaranteed income, you have this amount of money that you're receiving, and LA Family Housing will cover you, even though that's a lot of criteria. They got me in there. But there was many families who had been in the shelters for over a year, over 2 years, and they hadn't gotten housed. And some of them were working 2 jobs. And so Big Leap changed my life completely, because I wouldn't have been able to get that apartment and get to where I'm at now had it not been for receiving those resources.
Thank you. So I'm going to come back to Erin.
Sure.
Erin's been involved in a number of conversations, policy conversations that are happening at the local, state, and national level. Erin, I'd like for you to talk about some of the learnings that we're seeing from other pilots and the success of those pilots, but also what we are hoping to do with this body of work.
Sure.
I know that we would love to continue, as the administrators of this program, but some of the potential policy areas that we may be able to support or add value in. So talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, whenever I'm in a space that discusses guaranteed income, I find it so fascinating because there's so many other policy areas that get brought in. We talk about guaranteed income and care work. We talk about guaranteed income and immigration, guaranteed income and public health, because it has an impact on all of these different areas and stands to support so many different vulnerable populations. So I think it's really powerful because I find it as a great door to these other issues that we all care about, right? Big Leap specifically, I mean, we're certainly hoping to add to this growing body of research that really shows this is a positive public investment. It's a smart way to spend public dollars, which is a really powerful cycle to help initiate. And all these different pilots across the nation serve, different populations, right? There's some that serve formerly incarcerated individuals, some that serve pregnant folks, some that serve artists. And it creates this kind of tapestry of research that demonstrates the efficacy of these programs. But I think the next step of the movement is to turn pilots into policy.
So what are we learning from the other pilot programs across the country?
Sure. I think a lot of what India and Alondra shared today holds true across the nation. Like, folks are better able to meet their basic needs. They can stay housed. They can escape abusive relationships. We're seeing them start small businesses, go back to school. There's so many benefits, and it definitely depends on each family's unique situation. But that's the power of guaranteed income, right? Families then can control their own destinies. And I think that holds true across all of the pilots.
So I want to come back to the two of you and ask, what would you share with policymakers? What do you think is the most important element of this work, or do the criteria make sense? So that if we do continue these programs, what would you want the program to continue to look like in the future?
So for me personally, I think the key issue that needs to really be addressed is the fact that this needs to be a floor level thing. Like, to sit here and some people think that, and even some government officials also believe that guaranteed basic income is like a privilege, when it's really not. It should be a floor level thing, because guaranteed basic income isn't even enough to cover an apartment right now. Like, it's not enough to cover a car payment, insurance, food, water, and shelter. Like, those are things that you need. And like, even if you take the car part out of it and you're like, oh, well, people could commute places, like, sometimes where people are at, the bus system's not good. Government's supposed to represent us. Government's supposed to speak for us. They're supposed to sit here and say, this is what's going on with our population. What can we do to contribute with it? And so I think that doing what Big Leap has been doing, continuing to create like a road, like a bridge to basically, how can we help you, and how can we help you help yourself, instead of just being like, okay, well, this is what we're offering, take it. It's like, no, there needs to be voices. People like us need to come in and speak and say, hey, this is how this worked for me. And people in government, especially like higher officials, need to listen to also the local officials. Because sometimes I feel like there's a huge disconnect. There's people that are higher in government that are like, okay, well, that's not my job. And it's like, well, yes, it is, because you were speaking for that whole city, and then that person who's speaking for that whole city needs to connect to the state level, and it just keeps going higher and higher. And yes, that person's only one person, but that's your job. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like it, that's okay. But we need to start making a change and start seeing, like, there's a need, and if there wasn't, why is things getting worse? Why are people struggling? Right now, to buy an apple is like $1. And like, that might not seem like a lot, but it's like 1 apple per person. If you have a household full of 5 people, they're not just gonna eat 1 apple a week. You know, it's like, you start seeing that things right now are not livable. Gas prices are at $6. Sometimes they'll drop down to 5. It's like, how are you supposed to live off that? And it's like, unless you're working 24/7, everyone's like, hustle culture. Like, you just need to hustle. You just need to do better. I know people who work in 2 jobs and they can barely afford rent. Like, it's ridiculous. And so I think that what you guys are doing is great, and I hope that it continues, and I hope that people that are in higher levels of positions see how much Big Leap has made an impact and continue to try to move for programs like this to, like I said, be a floor level instead of thinking it's a privilege.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very well said. Thank
I
you.
feel like I relate so much to what you were just saying, because it's not I feel like people think we have the choice to like not be in this position, but like you said, like people are working 2 jobs, and then they also have their 2 kids at home, and it's like we're not choosing to be here. We're not choosing to qualify for Big Leap. You know, we're working our butts off to, you know, provide for our families, and so I definitely relate to you. And then even like we were talking about before about kids with developmental disabilities, like my child has appointments almost weekly, and so it's impossible for me to work a 9 to 5. What is my boss going to think? Oh, she's always calling off to go to appointments, you know? And so how can I maintain and hold a job if I have a child with a disability who's having multiple appointments a week? You know, it's really hard, and I just think that, you know, like I said, we didn't choose to be here. We didn't choose to live below the poverty line at all.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to close the show now, but I just want to say again how much I admire you for being brave to come here and share your stories with us and the impact that this has had, and to remind us, you know, as the administrators, why this work is so important and why it always needs to be grounded on the, you know, directly to support and with reflection and with the input of the people that we're trying to serve. Right? Oftentimes, I think I've said it publicly many times, is that we don't create programs or policies sometimes that are centered in the lives of the people that we're trying to impact. And I think this is a reminder of how powerful an investment can be if it is centered, you know, in supporting those that we're targeting. So I just want to say again, thank you, and of course thank Aaron for his incredible work and leadership in creating and helping us create this program and bringing it to life here in our city. And you have us as your advocates, as your, you know, the champions that you have within a department. But of course, we have a number of policymakers that we work very closely with that are very supportive of this work and seeing this movement continue to grow. So thank you. And just I'm going to invite Aaron to share any final thoughts before we wrap up.
Sure, thank you. I think we've covered a lot of great ground here today, and I just wanted to echo my gratitude. It's been a real privilege being involved in this work. As you mentioned, it's some of the most transformational work happening at the local government level. And it's been really amazing to see the program develop, to see our participants grow, not just financially stable, but in their levels of self-confidence and dignity. It's been an honor to be able to be a part of that.
Thank you. And as always, I want to thank the audience for staying engaged with us and for helping to raise awareness about guaranteed income. For more information and stories about our program, you can visit laforfamilies.org. We'll see you next time.